Well, good Monday morning. Welcome to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street in Corning. I hope everybody had an amazing Easter. It's good to be back. If you missed the program last week, we had a very exciting show, last two shows on Thursday and Friday with rock and roll legend Duane Eddy. I received a great response from you, the viewers, some people from his fan club, the Duane Eddy Circle. So you can always join that if you are a big Duane Eddy fan. If you missed it, they are posted now on YouTube, also our Facebook page. So like us, our Facebook page, as well as follow us and subscribe to us on YouTube so you can never miss an interview. We'd appreciate it. By the way, today on the program, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano is going to join us. We had Phil on not that long ago, but there's so much going on with the New York State budget. We're looking at most likely another extension. We're going to talk to Phil about that, what we can expect moving forward today. He's actually on his way to Albany, stopping here first and then going directly to Albany. So you can contact us with last-minute questions, last-minute information. Maybe you have something you'd like to ask the Assemblyman. Well, there you go. It's as simple as that. Text or email. Now, we've got a lot of big stories from over the weekend. It was a pretty hectic news weekend, not really one you could take off and just relax. We're going to talk about those, the intelligence leak. The intelligence leak, a few things here about China. We do have a couple of stories about the New York State budget. Hopefully we can get to all of that and much more. But we're going to take our first break. Again, don't forget to contact us. I also wanted to highlight that on the program on Wednesday, we'll have representatives from the Salvation Army of Corning. If you want to find out how you can get involved in that amazing organization, we'll find out from them how they're doing and what their needs are. And then on Thursday, we'll be talking with Allison Hunt. She is running for Steuben County Legislature. She is also running for re-election on the Corning City Council, so she'll be joining us on Thursday. And then on Friday, Eileen Collins, the astronaut. It looks like she is booked for Friday's show, so we look forward to all of those guests. Still working on one dropped out, or scheduling conflict came up for tomorrow, so we're still working on that, and I'll keep you updated. We may even hear from a few people I reached out to live during the program. So this is Frankly Speaking. I'm your host, Frank Acom. Thanks so much for joining us. Let's take that short break to kick off, and then we'll get right into the news of the day. So please stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson's studio. So over the weekend, let's get our browser up. This is fascinating because we've talked about this actually with former Congressman Tom Reed, had this discussion, and watching what China is doing throughout the world. China believes that they are already the world superpower or very close to being the world superpower. We saw a little bit of that, rumblings of that, when you had the meeting with Russia. You're seeing a lot of flexing, if you will, from China. And this is an example. China has simulated precision strikes against key targets on Taiwan and surrounding waters during a second day of military drills. The drills, which Beijing has called a stern warning to the self-governing island, a response to Taiwan's president visiting the U.S. last week. And we know that China very often sends threats, if you will, if we are to meet with Taiwan, The reason I mention this is it's a larger picture because it ties in with our next story as well. We have to take this threat seriously and what that will mean for us if China becomes this world's superpower, if we go to their currency, if so many things can happen. Because China, of course, a communist government, we want America to stay the world superpower. It's best for the world. So if you look here, Chinese tech companies are exploiting the U.S. green energy goals. So this is fascinating. We've talked about green energy on so many levels and how it is being exploited, how it's going to cost us in the long run because the technology isn't there, so we're rushing into it. But China is exploiting this weakness and our rush to do something very quickly instead of doing it right. Subnational incursions are afoot. China is on the hunt, said former U.S. ambassador. telling Fox News. Yes, this is all a part of a larger picture. It says here, former U.S. Ambassador Peter Hoekstra and Joseph Sella said Chinese companies, which are subject to strict Chinese laws, have made a concerted effort to take advantage of U.S. green energy goals. And again, we've rushed these goals, and they're finding that weakness. That's what we're seeing here when simulating the attack on Taiwan. They're seeing how far they can push it. And that ties in, and we're moving quickly, but it all is a larger picture. You undoubtedly saw this over the weekend. This is the major story, and I wanted to get to that because, again, I'll be highlighting some of these stories about China because I think it's something we can't take lightly. We have to keep a close eye on it. So we'll be bringing them up on, frankly speaking, perhaps more than other outlets that you go to. And that's why we do things a little bit different here and try to get you stories that you may not see everywhere else. Now, yes, Fox highlighting that, the other story originally from the BBC. I want to give credit where credit's due. Now, this is the big issue of the day, one of a few. Actually, it was a pretty hectic week last week and weekend, but intelligence leak exposes U.S. spying on adversaries and allies. It is kind of interesting because it's a rare look into, which is not good, but the inner workings of American espionage, and there's going to be some awkward moments as it highlights some of the spying that we've done on our allies. So they're trying to track down who released it. Some have compared it to the Edward Snowden leak. It's very troubling because it makes our allies question us, makes it so they may not share some of that information if it's so easily leaked. I'm not sure. It gets very wonky on where they think it came from. I don't quite understand all of the different websites, I guess they're called, but they were on Discord, which is a chat platform popular with gamers, basically. But I guess there's other avenues for that. The documents were shared by a user back in, it looks like February, but they're trying to track down the exact leaker on this. Senior Pentagon leadership restricted the flow of intelligence Friday in response to the revelation. One described the clampdown as unusually strict and said it revealed a high level of panic among Pentagon leadership. A European intelligence official worried that if if they restrict allies' access to future intelligence reports, it could leave them in the dark. Now, these are, many of them, top secret documents as well. That's something to highlight, that they're not low-level staffer released it. This is some very, very serious stuff. We'll talk about this in a little bit. I just realized that we already have to take a break. This show's moving really fast for a Monday, so I hope that you'll stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox, stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV. Big Fox broadcasting from the Hesselson studio here on Marcus Street. Walk by, wave. Phil Palmisano coming up in just a little bit. Just back to that story about the intelligence leak. What's kind of fascinating about it is the 50 pages reviewed by the Washington Post. I know they're not showing these pages, but the way I understand it is you can even still find this online. This is not went away, but it has nearly every corner of the U.S. intelligence apparatus in it. The document described intelligence activities at the National Security Agency, the CIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, law enforcement agencies, and the National Reconnaissance Office. Arguably the most secretive intelligence agency, the NRO, is responsible for a multi-billion-dollar constellation of spy satellites. This is going to be something we have to watch closely, and how our allies and how our adversaries react to this troubling intelligence leak. Now, coming up in just a little bit, we'll be talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. We do have a few things here on the budget. Budget looking like it is going to be delayed again, though we'll pick Phil's brain on that. By delayed, I mean another extension issued. So we'll talk to him about that. We have a couple other, if you recall, Friday we talked about a little bit, but energy questions. Some of these going back to what we were talking about at the very beginning of the show with China exploiting some of our green energy policies. Well, New York, of course, we've embrace those green energy projects, even if we're not prepared to embrace them. Governor Hochul wanted to change some of them to save us money. And that, of course, was shot down as well, a part of this. But we're going to talk to Phil about the energy policies here in New York as well. That's coming up in just a little bit. I wanted to highlight, because it's coming right up, and if you wanted to sign up, here it is. The craft fair coming to the Horseheads American Legion, Post 442. That's on April the 15th from 10 a.m. till 2 p.m. So if you want to attend, there's your information. But also, if you want to sign up, if you are an arts and crafts kind of person, well, there you go. Email right there on the screen, and you can get signed up for the April 15th craft fair at the Horseheads American Legion. I know I mentioned that a couple weeks ago, but I wanted to highlight it as it is near. Okay, we've got to take another short break. We're waiting for Assemblyman Phil Palmisano, who should be in just a little bit. I am going to check our contact information. I'll be checking that right before we go on the air. So if you have any last-minute questions for the Assemblyman about the budget or just in general about New York State right now, that's the best way to reach me. I'll be, again, checking it seconds before we go live on the air with Assemblyman Palmisano. The budget process is going to be fascinating. We still believe that the holdup is bail reform, that Governor Hochul is somewhat sticking to her guns, which is good. We'll see how long that lasts exactly. Hopefully, but there's a lot of pushback. And I saw, again, another rally being held for the $21.25 minimum wage increase. Governor Hochul having it set at $15 an hour. Many saying that's just pennies. It doesn't go far enough. That was their term. We don't want your pennies. So looking to increase it to $21.25 an hour as a state law. So as you can tell, we'll have a lot of nuances about this budget that we'll talk to the Assemblyman about. If you have any suggestions for upcoming interviews, I think we have some pretty cool interviews coming up in a little bit. But if you have any suggestions, please contact me. The Dwayne Eddy one has received a lot of rave reviews to hear from Dwayne and to hear about his connections to the local area. Obviously someone that loves our area. Even though he moved at a relatively young age. So if you have any suggestions on how we can honor him in the city of Corning, a plaque, a sign, or if you know somebody we should contact about getting the ball rolling on that, I think we should work on that. I want to make that a goal, because I think it's something that Corning should be proud of and is proud of, but we need to do more to honor someone who has done so much for our area by always highlighting that he was from Corning and always bragging about Corning. I've seen him on interviews before, unrelated to local interviews here, where he bragged about his time in Corning and his time in the surrounding areas. Okay, let's take that short break. We got Assemblyman Phil Palmisano coming up. We will, after Phil, hopefully have a little bit of time to talk about a few more localized issues. Maybe a couple things here about Trump, but we'll just have to play it by ear and see how much time we have left. So, just waiting on the Assemblyman. Stay with us. We'll be back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Joining me in the studio this morning for the M.A. Neal Financial Services section of our program, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Good morning, Phil.
Good morning, Frank. Good to be with you.
Yeah, great to have you, because all we've been talking about, it seems like, is bail reform and the budget. It looks to me, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, are we going to see another extension today?
Yes, there'll be another extension vote today.
Okay.
Last week there was a 1-week extender. I haven't even seen the details of the extender yet.
Mm-hmm.
I'll see it when I get up there, but I would assume it's going to be another 1-week extender while the governor and the legislative leaders try to work to negotiate a final budget. And what that final budget looks like is still to be determined. And as you mentioned, bail reform is one of the critical pieces of the budget discussion, which the governor has been pushing, and I give her credit for that. She should be pushing. She should use the bully pulpit of her office to try to push that through, because otherwise the progressive legislature is not going to do anything on it. They're balking and trying to include anything in the budget. I'm not usually a proponent of putting policy in the budget, but in this case I think the governor needs to use the power she has as the executive to put that in the budget to bring back some sanity to our criminal justice laws.
And for safety of the residents.
Safety of our residents.
I know we talked about it last time, but Lee Zeldin did so well on the back of public safety.
Absolutely.
And I think Hochul sees that.
She does see that. She recognizes that. But whether she's willing to put the power
Yeah.
of the executive behind it and push it. She talks the big game.
Mhm.
It's just hopefully she'll push that through as part of the budget negotiations, because what she could do, ultimately, she hasn't done it. I don't think she'll do it for this budget extender. She didn't do it last week. She could, if she in a sense wanted to, she could just present her whole budget to us for an up or down vote.
Okay.
She could present an extender with the bail reform that she was pushing for in an up or down vote, and then at the legislature, they don't have the ability to accept it or reject it.
Right.
They can't amend it. They can't negotiate it. They accept or reject what she puts in front of them on that extender. And if they reject it, then you shut down the government. That's why we have to go up. We have to pass the budget by 12 noon today to meet the payroll the comptroller said. So that's why we go into session at 11 o'clock today. So that's why when we finish here, I'm going to be right on the road.
You're going to be right on the road. One of the, I think the problems for me anyway, is the secrecy of all this. We don't really get any updates. It's just kind of hearsay a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, that's always been the problem with the traditional budget negotiations. It used to be referred to as 3 men in a room. Now it's 2 women in a room and the Speaker of the Assembly.
Right.
But that's the problem. I mean, we're up there. We're supposed to be representing 20 million New Yorkers, and there's no input, no feedback. Even my Democratic colleagues on the other side of the aisle, they don't necessarily know what's going to happen until there's some sort of a conceptual agreement or parameters of negotiations. But right now, without question, the bail reform, I think, is taking up 90% of the oxygen in the room, as a speaker, paraphrasing what the speaker said. So that's dominating the conversation. So we'll go up, we'll pass the extension. What I don't know is if they're just going to we'll be at the call of the speaker probably, because we're not scheduled to be up there. Whether they'll just have us up there and continue to be up there and why they negotiate or not, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, that's the big question on all of this. Do you think the governor will stay strong on this?
I really don't know. It's hard to say. I mean,
I hope so.
last couple weeks ago, she came out and saying we need to change the methodology for the Green New Deal stuff.
Yeah.
Saying we should go from basically it's just more inside baseball stuff, but it has a significant impact on costs for consumers. I mean, she came out and said we should change it from a 20-year methodology to a 100-year methodology, which would basically align us with 48 other states. It's just New York and Maryland, and that goes with this 20-year methodology. Even the federal government uses a 100-year methodology to measure methane emissions, and that would be significant impact. If we don't change that, just to give you an idea, we would increase gas prices by 60%.
That's
60 cents a gallon. Home heating costs by 80%. I mean, 60% of the people
we can't afford this.
Natural gas. No, it's not affordable. And it was mind blowing to me to see Doreen Harris and Basil Sagels, the two chairs of the Climate Action Council, who pushed through their Climate Action Council plan by 19-3 vote, which was dominated, which it never took into consideration cost and affordability or reliability. It was only about being quote unquote green and renewable and so-called clean, which that's a whole other discussion we could have at another time, but it's not green and clean.
Well, I brought it up at the beginning of the show. There was a fascinating piece that China is exploiting all of our green energy programs because we're not where they want us to be, and they're rushing us. Whether it's at the state level or the federal level, they've got to do this right, and instead they're basically virtue signaling.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's like the New York State in particular says. I mean, the federal government, Joe Biden, is pushing it, but it's being slowed down, obviously, by some cooler heads up there. We don't have them in the leadership in Albany, unfortunately, at least not on the Democratic side. I mean, we are totally turning our energy security over to China as we advance this plan in New York State, because this only affects New York State. It doesn't affect China, India, or Russia. It doesn't affect Pennsylvania or Ohio. And New York only contributes 0.4% of the total global emissions. Yeah. China contributes 29%, has 1,000 coal plants and building more, expanding their coal capacity over the next year by 70 gigawatts. That's double our total generating capacity in New York State, because we're around 41 gigawatts of generation. And that's a fuel diverse mix that has wind, solar, hydro, but also has natural gas, nuclear, oil.
Isn't that one of the problems that we have? And I know we've talked about it a lot, where voting has consequences. And when you have a supermajority like this, you get a lot of things we would have laughed at in the past. Well, that'll never go through. Now going through.
Well, absolutely, voting have consequences. I give the example. In 2018, the Senate Republicans had control of the majority. It was a 32-31 majority on election eve. After election night, it went to a 40-23 minority overnight. And from then, 2019, the policies, what did they bring us? They brought us the Green New Deal for New York, the CLCP. It brought us the Farm Labor Act that's going to be devastating to our farmers, which lowers the overtime threshold for farm workers and just going to put a target on the back of our farmers and their ability to survive. It brought us taxpayer-funded campaigns to the tune of $200 million a year. I mean, yeah, I'm sure people out there would rather be spending $200 million to subsidize political candidates running for office and elected officials, or would you rather have that for your schools or to invest in your roads and bridges, or to maybe give some tax break to some small businesses? In 2019, also, one party rule brought us the bail reform that we're talking about today. And every year we turn around, we're talking about tweaking it. The governor tweaked it last year with patting herself on the back. It's not enough. People are not safe. They do not feel safe in their community. And the number one responsibility we have as a government is to keep our citizens safe. And we're failing them. We're failing them out in the communities, and we're failing them inside our correctional facilities as well, because there's an assault on our correctional officers and staff working inside our correctional facilities because of policies that have been implemented by this executive and by the progressive legislature. So we need to keep our citizens safe. And even, quite frankly, the plan Governor Hochul's advancing on bail reform does not go far enough. We believe there should be judicial discretion. Judges should have the discretion to take into consideration the dangerousness of an individual before setting bail or releasing them to the public. We are the only state in the nation right now that does not allow that judicial discretion. Even New Jersey, which was touting their bail reform laws, allows for judicial discretion to allow judges to look at the situation, look at the history, look at the past, and take that into consideration when either setting bail or releasing people out into the public. We need to have a dangerousness standard, and even Governor Hochul's not pushing this. So she's getting pushed back on, some of the other tweaks she's trying to do with it. It's not nearly far enough, but we need to make some progress on this, and the governor needs to use her bully pulpit. Will she or won't she? I don't know.
I get concerned, too, what she might concede or what she might give up to push that through. You never know because sometimes you want an outcome, but then you see what happened with the negotiation process and think, oh, wow, maybe it's worse.
Right. Well, first of all, if all you have to do is look at the one house budget priorities of the Assembly and Senate, both of those budgets, I think the Assembly spent $6 billion more than the governor proposed. The governor proposed $7 billion over last year. The Senate, I think, were $15 billion or so over the governor over last year. And how do they want to pay for it? They want to do tax increases, and they want to tax the quote-unquote rich. The wealthy already pay the lion's share of taxes in New York State.
And they're leaving in droves.
And I'll give you an example to the listeners. There was a study done in 2020 in just New York City. They had 3.57 million New Yorkers with an average income of around $140,000 leave the state. 3.57 million left. They were replaced by 3.5 million New Yorkers with an average income of around $80,000. That turned into a net loss of that's 70,000 people, net loss of people, but a net loss of $34 billion in taxable income that left our state. So that's unsustainable. We continue to see more and more people. We lost 500,000 New Yorkers just in the past 2 years. And by that same methodology, from 21 to 2022, according to Tax and Finance, we lost another $19.5 billion in taxable income that lost our state based on the higher income earners leaving and being replaced by lower income workers. Not that we don't want all workers, but if we continue to put more of a burden on the very people that we want to invest and create jobs here and stay here and pay taxes here, they're the most mobile. They can get up, they can leave, they can go to Texas, they can go to Florida, they can go to Tennessee where there's no state income taxes. So why wouldn't they?
Exactly.
And I guess
especially when they're villainized.
They're villainized. And my argument is wouldn't you rather have 10.3% of $5 million than 10.8% of zero?
Yeah.
When you rather have 10.9% of $25 million and 11.4% of zero?
Yeah.
That's where we're heading. And when you have those loss of income, you're going to have no point but to cut programs, and the progressive legislature doesn't want to cut programs, so their only issue is to get more revenue, and that means they're going to be coming after you. They want to increase taxes on streaming services like Netflix and Amazon Prime and things like that people might use for their television watching, and they want to use that to pay for the MTA. So people up here would be paying on their subscription services to pay for the MTA. Where's the balance there? And I just don't understand it. We do not have a revenue problem in New York State. We have a spending problem in New York State. Even the comptroller came out during the budget time, said that we're going to increase our debt by 42% over the next 5 years by $2.5 billion. That's unsustainable.
Yeah.
We can't continue down this pathway if we want our young people to stay here and have jobs and opportunities here. If we want our small businesses to continue to be able to stay here, grow here, and thrive here. But all you see is more and more businesses leaving. And then when we have a chance to help the small businesses, which were devastated by the COVID mandating closures and lockdowns, how do we pay them back? The state borrowed money from the federal government to pay for unemployment.
Yeah.
We're putting a surcharge on these small businesses here on Market Street and businesses here in the Southern Tier and the Finger Lakes region and all across the state to pay that debt back, rather than using the billions of dollars in COVID funds that we have, that we could have access to help pay and provide some relief to our small businesses. It's just misplaced priorities. You can go down one issue after another.
Well, just like you mentioned, and I know we haven't talked about it since the new show, but even the public-funded campaigns, is when people see what that is, they almost laugh. It's so bad.
It's terrible.
And they're flying it under the radar. A lot of people don't know this is going on.
People don't know about it. I mean, we talk about it. We brought it up during the campaign. How it works, just to give you an idea for the listener. Let's just take a $250 donation that comes to a campaign.
Yeah.
The breakdown of that would be the first $50 we get a 12-to-1 match in taxpayer funds.
So you and me.
The next $100 would be a 9-to-1 match, and the last $100 would be 8-to-1. So for a $25 or $250 contribution, would basically net you about $2,500 in taxpayer funds. And the amount, the cap on this is very limited, and it's very, very concerning. I mean, the thing about our system now, it's not perfect. Do we have reform and changes? Sure, but now
this is not the answer.
If someone agrees with me on an issue, they want to donate to my campaign, they can do that. But now if you vehemently disagree with me, if I want to enter into this system, now your taxpayer dollars are going to go to fund my campaign, and that goes for anybody. It's just wrong. It's misplaced priorities. And that money is better spent in other places. I mean, like
a million other places.
Education, transportation, helping support the development of the disabled or most vulnerable citizens, and the dedicated professional staff who support them. There's a lot better use of that money than subsidizing campaigns for elected officials. So that's just wrong, and it just really goes to show the misplaced priorities of this one-party control and this really democratic, progressive, socialist agenda. And when I say socialists, I mean that, because they are self-proclaimed democratic socialists that are driving the agenda in Albany, and it's pretty scary.
Phil, I know you have to go to Albany. Can I keep you through the break, though?
Yeah,
just real
fine.
quick? Okay, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. This is the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview. Stay with us. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV Big Fox. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio, and this is the M.A. Neal Financial Services interview. Trying to get up to our main screen there. And joining me, Assemblyman Phil Palmisano. Thanks again, Phil, for being on the show.
My pleasure, Frank.
So we were talking about the budget, and I want to get to some other issues and not just focus on that for a second. But I've been shocked. I keep getting these emails. I don't know how I got signed up for them. But so many rallies demanding that minimum wage in New York be moved up to $21.25. How I know we're already ranked very bottom of business-friendly states, and how does a business come here when they want to jack it up to 21 1/4?
They're not.
Yeah,
that's the problem. I mean, we did it in New York. I mean, we border Pennsylvania here. It's still $7.25 an hour over there. Yeah. I mean, that's probably not high enough, but I mean, our small businesses across the Southern Tier are competing with Pennsylvania. If a business can go locate, and all you have to do is go to Pennsylvania, paying lower income taxes, property taxes, workers' compensation costs, certainly energy costs, one thing after another. Businesses need to be able to compete. And when we put more and more taxes and burden, we have the highest taxes in the nation, the worst business climate in the nation. You throw more and more things at them, like the unemployment surcharge, more wages. And when you increase the minimum wage, it doesn't just affect it's not just the wages, it affects your insurance payments, your disability insurance, your Medicare tax, all those things. And it's not sustainable. And the minimum wage was never meant to be a living wage. It was meant to be an entry level or a training wage. And all you're going to do is you're going to hurt these businesses. There's not going to be jobs for people.
The small businesses, you can't hire somebody else on even if you need somebody at 21 1/4.
Yeah, it's impossible. It's virtually impossible. And the people that are pushing this have no ideas what it costs to run a business, what's involved with it, have no idea what it costs to run a farm or operate a farm. But yet they expect the services and products to come at a cheap price, an affordable price, and make sure all the workers get all the benefits. But the owner who puts their blood, sweat, and tears, and takes out second mortgages and scrimps and to save, they're forced with challenges. I mean,
Yes.
the small businesses are the ones are the major job creators in our communities, and if we're going to make it more difficult for them to create jobs, if we're going to increase their costs, they're going to reduce costs where they can. And that's usually with payroll and benefits because they have no choice because they have to survive. And I just don't understand the methodology of this or the rationale for this argument. It's not going to work. It's not sustainable. It's just going to hurt the very people we want to invest and create jobs here.
I agree. Now, Phil, because again, I know you got to go to Albany, but I saw your lapel pin there. It's Donate Life Month. We were talking with Judy and Hunter about that, actually. Could you tell us a little bit about your passion for this exact issue?
Oh, yeah, Frank. Thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, this is a very personal issue to me. My sister, Teresa, was a juvenile diabetic. She was a 2-time organ transplant recipient because of the diabetes really crushed her kidneys and her pancreas, obviously. So she had a donation once in 2000 from the kindness of a stranger, and then I had the privilege to donate a kidney to her in 2006. But she was a lucky one. I didn't realize how bad the numbers were in New York until I was elected in office and went up to Albany, and my colleague Jim Conte, who was really the leader of this movement, he was a 2-time kidney transplant recipient himself. Jim passed away in 2012, unfortunately, but he really kind of was the heart and soul of our conference and led this issue. But we really made some progress. I mean, but right now, there are nearly 8,500 New Yorkers on the wait list waiting for a life-saving transplant. There are 1,300 have been waiting for more than 5 years. So, I mean, you have we lost nearly 400 New Yorkers last year waiting for a life-saving organ transplant. But we've made tremendous progress. And the one number I tell people that's the most powerful number is that one person who donates at the time of their death can save up to 8 lives and impact the lives of 75 others. So, I mean, you can really make a lasting impact. But when you look at other states, I mean, there's 52 states out there, or 50 states and 2 territories. We're 50 out of 52. We're only ahead of Puerto Rico and I believe New Jersey on the states. So we've made some progress, but we have a long way to go. And I know when we talk about this issue, you're thinking of one's own death, so it's hard to think about that. But when you hear some of these statistics I just gave you, now think about it if your mom or dad, your brother or sister, or God forbid your son or daughter were in need of a life-saving or organ transplant, and then you saw these statistics, it makes it more, that might prompt you to sign up to be an organ donor. And this is something really where, you can really save lives, and this is what it's about. It requires to pass a bill. It doesn't require to spend a lot of money. It just requires education and awareness. And as we promote Donate Life Month this month, just consider, if you haven't, I urge you to really consider being an organ donation, because at the end of the day, you're going to save lives.
Yeah. How does somebody get involved if they maybe haven't signed up for this? Is it pretty simple?
You can go online to do it. We have there's a website now where you can go through DonateLife.org. New York Donate Life. You Google Donate Life. You can go right on the website and you can answer a few brief questions. You'll sign up. You can go to DMV and sign up when you get your license. You can go. Also, you can sign up through if people are going for the health insurance plan in New York State. There's a whole host of ways you can sign up to be an organ donor. And I really believe we just got to get the question in front of people. The more we put the question in front of people, the more people are going to sign up to be an organ donor. I mean, I've often been asked, do you think we should be a opt-out state and you're an organ donor unless you opt out? And I just don't agree with that thinking, because organ donation is a gift. It's a gift of life, and you shouldn't be pressured into it. You should be doing it willingly because you want to do that and know how it's going to benefit people. So I'm not a big advocate of the opt-out, but we don't need to opt out. We just need to get the question in front of people, and I think the more we do, I think the more people are going to sign up to be an organ donor. So it's just,
I agree.
I guess that statistic, I just say over again, one person who donates at the time of their death can save up to 8 lives and impact the lives of 75 others. And what better legacy to leave knowing that you made that type of impact in saving lives.
Phil, just before we go, what do you think when you're headed to Albany right now? What do you think it's going to look like today? Is it going to be a mess, or is it just going to be the one vote?
I tend to think there's going to be the vote on the budget and then budget extender. It would be nice if we were voting on the budget, but I tend to think it's going to be a budget extender vote. The question is, are they going to keep us around the rest of the week? If I was guessing, I don't think they will. But I know we are set to be returned to Albany next week for our regular schedules, which I think that will definitely adhere to that. So maybe the legislative leaders want to try to work and hopefully get to some agreement. But hopefully it's a budget that is fair and equitable for all New Yorkers. Hopefully it's a budget that has some significant bail reform so people can feel safe in their communities and their neighborhoods, because we have a crime crisis in the state, and
I agree.
In addition to an affordability crisis, and we need to take action to provide some relief to people on all those fronts. And unfortunately, I just don't see it coming from this one party control coming out of Albany, but we're going to continue to speak up. We're going to continue to advocate, and I'm going to continue to be as strong a voice as I can for the people here in the Southern Tier and Finger Lakes region, because they deserve it and they need it.
Well, Phil, thanks so much. Safe travels.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it.
All right, we'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. You caught me. I was still talking to Phil there. Running just a little bit late. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. We are broadcasting live from the Hesselson studio. And thank you again to Phil Palmisano for being our guest. He's on his way to Albany right now. It sounds like it is going to be a mess. We haven't, and I'm going to have Phil on just one time specifically to talk about that campaign financing, public campaign financing. Can you imagine your tax dollars are going to a candidate that essentially you may not like? I mean, think of a candidate maybe in the city, wherever, that you are, through your tax dollars, funding their campaign. But if you notice, and that's why I mentioned to Phil, it has been under the radar. The media is not really covering it. I did have a piece on one of the first shows, but it was almost laudatory, saying it was going to be a good thing. Of course, it raises more concerns, and we could be using that money in a wiser way, that's for sure. So thank you again to Phil for being on the program. There's my contact information. If you ever have questions for our guests, write that down. You can contact me at any time. Leave me a voicemail. Text is probably the best, or email. I received a lot of great emails and texts after our Dwayne Eddy interview. If you missed that, by the way, it was a 2-part interview. First time ever doing that on Frankly Speaking. We had him on Thursday and Friday. If you miss that or any of our interviews and you want to watch them, they're always up on YouTube, and we also post them to Facebook. Not the full show on Facebook, just the interview, but the full show on YouTube. Now, we've got to take another short break, and then we're going to wrap things up, discuss a couple last-minute stories that I think are important to start your day. So stay with us. We'll be right back with Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Welcome back to Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox, broadcasting from the Hesselson studio. Since we were talking with Assemblyman Phil Palmisano about the budget, I had a quick story here from the Post saying that this shows that the system isn't working. Nicole, I don't ever know how to say her name because I've only ever read it, but Jelinas said there was one reason to look the other way when multiple governors abused the state budget process over the past 2 decades to enact major policy changes is because it worked, she suggested. Now Governor Hochul, in her first proposed budget as elected leader, has somehow both overreached and underreached, stuffed too much into her budget, and so far failed to get it done. Obviously, the system isn't working, and I think that's what this article from the Post goes on to say. But we're seeing a real mess. I don't know how many extensions we'll be looking at. Governor Hochul over the weekend essentially signaling she's fine with extension after extension until she gets what she wants. I'm a little concerned that she will eventually cave on bail reform, or so much will be taken away and chipped off that it will have no teeth. But then she can still declare a victory, and the far left can declare a victory. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this all plays out, and that's why we wanted to have Phil Palmisano on the program to ask him. And this ties in with New York. Let me see if I can find it here. We talk about coddling criminals with bail reform. This is really interesting. So New York is now favoring ex-felons and ignoring disabled veterans for these pot licenses, meaning that, these official places, cannabis sale places that the state has authorized. Advocates say Governor Hochul's administration is discriminating against disabled military vets by prioritizing convicted drug felons when awarding licenses to sell marijuana, and possibly violating the very law that legalizes the sale of cannabis in New York. Chair of the Cannabis Association of New York's Veterans Committee said the whole veteran community is in an uproar. So far, the first 300 cannabis dispensary licenses have been set aside solely for applicants found guilty of pot-related charges. You may not be familiar with that. That was, in a way, for payback for their time spent in prison for selling cannabis. Only criminal applicants have been allowed to apply, said that member of the Veterans Organization. They said Hochul's administration, via the Office of Cannabis Management and State Cannabis Control Board, is passing over disabled vets and likely flouting the law by shutting them out of the process completely. All right, we've got to take another short break. Then we're going to wrap up the program. But always some nonsense coming out of Albany. So I'm sure we'll have plenty more in the upcoming days. But stay with us. This is Frankly Speaking on WYDC TV. Big Fox will be right back. The far left that are being involved in that process cannot budge an inch on it. They've made that very clear. So we'll keep an eye on it and see if Governor Hochul stands strong, or if it's just eventually we're putting off the inevitable. I wanted to mention this last story too, just because last week we had brought up the fact that, or 2 weeks ago now, that people were losing faith in faith. Essentially, they were not as patriotic. All this polling. Well, take it with a grain of salt. It is CNN, but CNN's saying predictions about the decline of Christianity in America may be premature. But one of the reasons that they're saying it's premature is, and this is kind of fascinating, the wave of Christians that are migrating to the U.S. That's why they believe they'll see the numbers increased. And that said, the biggest challenge to Christianity's future in America is not declining numbers, but the church's ability to adapt to this migration. Interesting, disheartening polls coming out showing people losing faith in the country as well. So much division, so much infighting. Well, that's it for today. I can't believe it. As always, you can contact me. That went fast, didn't it? We're having fun kicking off the week with Frankly Speaking. Thank you for letting us be a part of your morning routine. You can always contact me if you have any questions, comments, concerns. Have a great day, everyone, and we will be back tomorrow morning starting at 7 a.m. for Frankly Speaking here on WYDC TV, Big Fox. Have a great day, everyone.